You're between two dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we both are, but at the end of the discussion, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Skip and Dr. Marv, and then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. Remember, every time you comment on the show on YouTube, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to win a $150 shopping spree from EliteFTS.com, 5 pounds of Team Skip protein from TrueNutrition.com, and you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course. The more times you respond, the better your chances of winning. We'll post the winner for the month on my Intense Muscle Instagram account, and we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. Dr. Marv, I believe you've got the posit for today. Take the wheel.
Yes, sir. It is a listener question, so they are going to be entered in all those awesome drawings. I know. So, double mint, right? Double your pleasure, double your fun. You're getting your question answered, and you can win. Yeah. So this is from DGrow39.
Devin.
Yep.
Shout out to Devin, longtime client of mine, IFBB
awesome.
Pro.
Nice. So he did give Chris a shout out just when I thought the intros couldn't get any better, and that was referring to the. Actually, I don't remember which episode that was referring to, but regardless.
Yeah, that's because all the intros are bangers.
He's killing it. Yeah. So Chris is killing it. So question for the next show, and it might be something you've covered before, but I love your take on intensity modifiers and rate them. So he gave examples: blood flow restriction, drop sets, cluster set, rest pause, etc. So I figure it's not a traditional posit, but we will smash or pass every possible intensity method or intensifier that we could come up with.
Great.
And I figured this is a big topic. It'd be a lot of fun. So I figured I wrote them all on paper because there's so many different intensifiers, and we'll just kind of go through the list and then we'll go from there. Nice. Yeah.
Totally an accident. Yeah. Totally an accident. Not true. I don't like lemon.
Where's the yellow mic cover?
You did have to do that. I was like, I don't. Well, and I'm
but
close.
Now you match though.
I have one that's like orange, and I'm like, but then I have white headphones. It was a battle. It was a battle. I admit. I wanted a blue one. The blue would have been the right contrast.
That's why you were late hopping on, is you were sitting there trying to figure out what do I do. Yep.
It's like, hold on a second, Dr. Marv. I'm in the bathroom. Not really. Yep. I'm trying to figure out my pop mic filter.
Okay, so let's start with cluster sets, because that's a lot of them. So cluster sets, right, are, yes, it's one set, but there's rounds. You typically take them to failure, but not always. So the main cluster sets that we could talk about is, rest pause. Now we have, the DC rest pause versus rest pause in research. We have Dr. Scott Stevenson's muscle rounds. We have Bourget Fagerly's myo reps. I created a cluster set. Maybe I just stole it from somebody. That's a good possibility. You've been doing it as long as I have, called the 5-5. Paul Carter has a great cluster set called 10-6-10 on seated leg curls. We're gonna dance again. Guilty feet, I've got no rhythm. Yeah, those are all considered cluster sets. And then we could kind of break down each of them. Do you have any named cluster sets?
No.
There's mini rounds rest? Okay.
No, everybody you mentioned, you guys are very, very black and white.
Yep.
And I'm a black and white guy. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to things like that, I adjust on the fly, and I'm in the moment when it comes to extending sets or that. So it's not anything I plan ahead of time. I'll get into that, more as we dive in. But yeah, I don't plan a lot of, today I'm going to do this or that. No, as far as intensifiers, I'm not like that. I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated.
Okay, so let me do this. So let me pull up my instructions on how to do a DC rest pause. I'll just read it verbatim so I don't get it wrong, because I've made sure Dante said it's correct, and then we'll break that down. So rest pause is you'd go to failure, right? In the research, they called rest pause as long as you go to failure with a short rest interval. So for DC, it was originally written that you do one rest pause for like chest, and that's your only chest thing for the day. One rest pause for shoulders, one rest pause for triceps, blah, blah, blah. So it's 3 rounds, and then there would be isometrics, and then heated loaded stretching a part of that. But that's, I guess I could have included loaded stretching as intensifier, but I didn't.
Right.
So essentially you have 3 rounds and you're going to go to failure 3 times. So the original DC was 12 to 16 total reps through all 3 rounds, right? I typically program them 14 to 20, so I'm not doing 1 or 2 reps only on that 3rd round. So you go to failure and then you rest. Dante would say 20 breaths. I am beyond OCD, like we know about in the gym. So I set a timer to have a 40-second rest. I have seen everybody go 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I mean, hell, even 60 seconds. But I believe Dante originally said 15 deep breaths. But I want to be very specific because that's how my brain works.
Right.
And then you would go again. Typically, you're hitting half as many reps. So say the first round you hit 12. The second round you fight to hit 6. You would rest again. 3rd round you fight to hit 3. That would be 19 total reps. So that is that rep range I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Then he would have you rest and then do a 20-second isometric, and then that is done. So 3 failure points. Dr. Scott Stevenson created muscle rounds, which he gives Leo Costa credit for. And that's one reason why I always give people credit, because that was the example he set. That is one failure point. So, rest pause is typically failure every time. Muscle round is 1 failure point. So you take what is your 15 rep max, and then you're going to do 6 rounds of 4 reps.
Okay.
Pulling up this so I can read this verbatim so I don't mess it out, because I want to be very specific. So,
and those aren't to failure then?
No, only 1 failure point. So you're going to pick your 15 rep max for the load, right? And then obviously you want to be doing the right machines because rest periods are short. So you're not going to be doing like barbell back squats. You're going to be doing easy to get in and out of machines, or like dumbbells for arms,
Right.
You're not doing a barbell. So you have 6 rounds of 4 reps, ideally hitting absolute failure around 4 or 5, right? So, 4 reps every time. You hit failure on the 3rd rep of round 5, you would reduce the load some, do your normal breathing pattern, and then finish that. So only a single failure point.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So you want a 1-to-1 work ratio. So Dr. Scott talked about 5 deep breaths. I am doing 15 seconds for myself because I'm doing slow negatives, right? So 4 reps, 5 deep breaths, or 10 to 15 seconds, because you want a 1-to-1 work ratio. So I literally timed my working ratio, and I did that for my rest, right? So 4 reps, put it down. First round should be easy. Second round should be easy. 3rd round should be like, okay, it's getting a little hard. Then the 4th round, you should start to be pushing. The 5th round you go, ideally you're hitting failure once around that 5th round. So say I only hit 3 reps. Cool. I rack the weight. I strip it down 20, 25%. I do my 5 deep breaths, my 10 to 15, and then I just do 4 reps again. So it's only 1 failure point, right? So he was big on doing that. So it's reducing the inroads we talked about with, nervous system fatigue, blah, blah, blah.
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
Now, the first time you do a muscle round, say you undershot the weight because you don't know what you're doing. Say it's round 6, you did 4 reps. You just keep going. You do as many as you can until you hit failure to give you an idea of how much did I undershoot it.
Yeah,
so the first few times you might be hitting 8, 9, 10 reps round 6. The next time I got to raise the load a little bit.
Okay. This is, and I understand there are different camps. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And I also want to be very, very clear that Dr. Scott's training his methodology is great. It is backed with science. It is backed with experience. A lot of people use the methods with great success. That is way too complicated for Skip Hill. Not because my brain cannot process it and I can't understand it. It's because, quite frankly, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
That is not in my, and I'm sure there are people in my camp as well who just look at it and go, yeah, that's because I'm thinking, okay, I have to keep track of the amount. First, I got to figure out what my max is at 15 reps, which shouldn't be too difficult because failure at 15 reps is going to give that. And I'm a failure guy. Not because I fail at everything I do, but because of my, I want to clarify that before I get trolled. Exactly. But because I train to failure, that's just my modus operandi when it comes to training. That is, that's the black and white part that I am black and white about. But I just, that amount of time I would have to then track the amount of time that it takes for forward, then remember that and then do that off time and then change it. I don't want to focus on that. I just want to focus on the work and I just want to get to failure. So 2 camps, I guess. And maybe there are people that are in between as well. So there's going to be a lot of good information in here. And this is obviously only one method that we're talking about as well.
Correct. Yeah, you really need to logbook while you're dialing in your weights for this. And both Dr. Scott and Dante are very logbook driven, right? But they are also, you don't beat the logbook with ugly ass reps, but that's again why their training methodologies are amazing, but they're not for beginners. Like you've got to have so much discipline and self-control to not do shitty reps just so you could say you beat your numbers.
Right.
Like that's,
and it's easy to do.
Yep. Then let's go to myo reps from Borge Fagerly. Super, super smart dude. Yes, that is how you pronounce his name. I made sure.
I do want to point this out too, because I think it's important. Remember, the listeners may not, if they don't know, my history. I trained him years ago. He worked with me. I didn't put the name together for a few years because when you see his name,
with Borge?
Yes, or he worked with me.
That's awesome.
For the record.
Super smart dude.
Yeah, and what it is when I hear the name, I don't see it.
Okay.
I saw the name, and I'm like, oh shit, this cat worked with me. And I'm talking years ago. Understand, I mean, I started online in the early 2000s, Troponin, Justin Harris and myself started in 2001. We're going to do an interview with Generation Iron because they're going to finish up the filming with Justin Harris at Masters Nationals. So Justin asked me, if I could sign off to be in the footage and do an interview with him because we've been around and we've known each other for so long. And we met about the same time in roughly 2001. Anyway, the point is I've been around for a long time doing online training. It's been about, 24 years, give or take. This would have been, Intense Muscle started in 2004. So it would have been early 2000. It may have even been at Muscle Chemistry or Professional Muscle when he worked with me. But this is a long, long time ago, early 2000s, mid 2000s. But I didn't know that. I didn't put the name. I didn't put it together until only maybe a year or two ago when I actually saw the name. And I went, oh, that looks familiar.
That's awesome.
I'm not patting myself on the back.
That is a mic drop. Look who I know.
Yeah, well, and understand though, it's not a pat on my back. What it is it's an admission that I've been around for a long time. And a lot of these guys at some point were either friends of mine, they were members on Intense Muscle, or in this occasion, I worked with Jordan Peters in Corinne as well. Again, I'm not trying to name drop. I'm just trying to say I've been around for a long time and long enough to have worked with some of these guys have worked with me years ago. So
that's awesome. Yeah, super smart dude. He's a great follow on social media. Great follow. I believe he came up with the effective reps. I think he did before Chris Beardsley. I'm not saying that's 100% fact, but I'm pretty sure that was his brainchild. Okay. Regardless, both of them are good follows if you like the whole science stuff. But both of them are also train fucking hard, please. So, myo reps. So it's going to be It's brutal. It's really good if you're short on time, like we talked about in the previous episode. So let me just do, and this is how I do them. I've talked to him about how he does them as well. So this is the rep range I typically do. So you're going to do a movement. It's got to be just like the muscle round. Rest periods are very short, so it needs to be movements you could get in and out of. So machines or dumbbells, no barbells, no having to rack and unrack. So round one ideally is to failure, right? And you could do anywhere, and I'm always go a little bit higher in the rep range because it reduces the overall loading with my wear and tear, right? I just think the more you train, your rep ranges should go up a little bit. So the first round, you're going to do anywhere from 15 to 25 reps, ideally hitting failure. Then you're going to take 5 deep breaths. So there's that number again. Again, I use a timer, but to each their own. And then you're going to do 3 more rounds, anywhere from 1 to 5 reps, right? I try and aim for 3 to 5. The first little mini round is 1 rep in reserve. The second little mini round is 1 rep in reserve. Ideally, you're hitting failure on that final round. So it's 4 rounds total. So
okay, how are you aiming for 3 to 5 when you have all these variables locked in, like a metronome and everything else? Are you saying then that you're shooting for that rep range when you choose the weight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So again, getting the load right is really, really important. So it's going to take you probably 2 to 3 workouts to really get down to where then, yes, I have, people are going to laugh, but I have the little like 1.25 pound clips I could put on a dumbbell. So it's only a 2.5 pound jump when you're on the far end of the dumbbell rack, right?
Yes.
A 10 pound jump is a huge jump when you're fighting. But yeah, so those are mile reps. So it's 1 failure point. It's a good blend of, it's brutal as hell. If you've never done it, good God almighty. Right. So those are mile reps.
And let me point out,
Yep.
I said before that I'm not very black and white, but there are some things I am. I do believe in those micro weights for dumbbells. And a good example is, at least in my gym, once I get heavier and I get over the 90s, they make 10 or over 100s, they make 10-pound jumps. So not only for things like side laterals do those smaller increments or those smaller dumbbell weights make a big difference, but for those exercises where 2.5 pounds is it might not be a big deal on a dumbbell press, but it can be a big deal on a side lateral as an example. So it may not be the difference in you getting the reps, but it may be a difference in the feel and the fluidity of those reps. So I pick and choose where I'm black and white, I guess is my point.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't go to the extent that Jordan Peters does, where he's putting like extra weight collars as weight, right? But like, obviously, good God, the dude is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Either I still rip somebody off, or I came up with this on my own. So the listeners could let me know if I rip somebody off, which is possible.
Oh, they'll let you know.
Yep. So I call these 5-5 cluster sets. They need to be done on a machine, ideally one that is emphasizing the shortened position. So think like machine laterals, leg extensions. So essentially what you're going to do is there's 6 rounds. The first round, you're going to do a 5-second hold in the shortened position for 5 reps. Then you're going to do 5 deep breaths. Then you're going to do 5 reps that are continuous with no hold, 5 deep breaths. Then 4 reps, continuous, no hold, 5 deep breaths. Then 3, then 2, then 1.
Okay, sorry. Go back over that again, because that's a lot to process.
So I'm doing a machine lateral. It'll be on the screen, but I'll do the visual so you can see. So I'm doing a machine lateral. The first round I do 5 reps, and I'm doing a 5-second hold in the shortened position.
Okay.
And then I come down, and then 5, right? So 5 of those. Then I take 5 deep breaths. Then I do 5 continuous reps with no pausing in the bottom or the top, 5 deep breaths.
So far, I'm with you. Okay.
Then I do 4 reps the same way, and then 5 deep breaths. And then 3 reps, 5 deep breaths, then 2, and then 1, and then you're done.
Okay. Oh man, this is a lot of thinking, bro.
Yep. I did this on a deload week where I trained way too hard and came up with this. And I
was going to say deload.
Yeah. That was supposed to be deload. And then Last, just because I love them, I will program these in my workouts that I have, up online, is 10-6-10 sets from Paul Carter. I only do them on a seated leg curl. That's what he showed him, and I think it's great. So you do a 10-second isometric hold in the shortened position, and then you do 6 reps immediately with a 6-second negative, and then you do 10 partials at the end, right? With no that. So then you're getting, if people don't remember, your main calf muscle, your gastrocnemius, does the first 15 degrees of knee bend. So you're getting both your hamstring smoked and your calves, because at the end, you could see on the screen, my partial ranges ain't a lot. Like, I am pulling for everything I'm worse, and your calves are on fire, your hamstrings are on fire. So if anybody has, nagging Achilles issues, you could do partials on a leg curl, right? The first 15 degrees, and stimulate the calf. So that's a way to work around to maintain some size if you're having Achilles issues.
Fair enough.
Yep. So those are just examples of various cluster sets, right? Those are the main ones that I'm familiar with. So those are cluster sets. I love cluster sets. I will do all what I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I will do all 5 of them. Rest pause is my personal favorite of them and what I typically gravitate towards. But all of them are great. Muscle rounds, yes, are complicated. They take a lot of time to figure out the load. And I love cluster sets. There's some research on them, but I want to hear your thoughts before I talk about that.
Well, of course you do. You want to get my opinion before you give the research.
Yeah,
I see what that's it. No,
yeah.
I have no problem opining.
Okay.
Anybody who knows me knows that. Cluster sets, I'm not going to smash or pass yet. All I'm going to say is there's no way I'm doing that.
Yeah.
It's just too complicated. Again, I'm not knocking it, and I'm not saying that it's not back. Look, my philosophy or my ideology is just destroy the muscle. I prefer failure because I don't like to complicate it. I don't want to overthink it. I don't want my brain to be focused on a process outside of mechanics and failure, how hard I can hit that target muscle. I want those 2 things to be my main focus. I have tried them. I just find them to be, and that's another thing that I think is important. I won't speak for other people. Yes, I will. I will give my opinion on what I think other people do. I think other people have opinions on things even when they haven't done them. I don't do that. If I haven't done something, I'm not going to give, at least I don't think I do. Let's say that. There may be something that I think just has no merit at all because of my experience and the amount of time that I have spent training or dieting or whatever, where I could say, I'm just not even going to try that. But I got to tell you, I don't have any problem getting outside of the box and trying something. Just to, if nothing else, to check the box and say, yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
Or potentially, yeah, I was wrong. I don't like them. It's just a process that is to me to be far too complicated, and in keeping track of that level of minutia would be distracting me from it. It's twofold. It'd be distracting me potentially from, I mean, I'd be almost anxious going, oh my God, was that right? Was it 13 seconds? Was it 12? I don't think that was right. I just don't want that level of anxiety. The other thing is I think in my situation, it would take away from the enjoyment of the process. It's pulling me into an area that is just borderline stressful, where I just don't want to deal with that. So I want to focus on what I enjoy. What I enjoy is the pump and the training and the goal in front of me. And I want to keep it as simplified as possible and just stay focused on that. Now, I'm not against, intensity, type techniques. But the cluster sets for me, they're just too complicated, and I'm not going down that path.
That's very valid, because if you don't enjoy your workout, you're not going to do it.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I like that. So one thing, and then we'll talk about research. the key with cluster sets that both Borge and Dr. Scott talk about, and I would assume Dante is the same. Reps are continuous. So once you start the round, you're not pausing, right, to take a breath and then go again. Reps are continuous. So Dr. Scott talks about how you're sprinting full speed off the towards the edge of the cliff. You can't slow down. You still got to sprint off and hit failure. So having reps be continuous, no pausing in between them to regather as a little set extender, I think is massive for cluster sets. And I know for sure those two gentlemen preach that. So,
and yet there are things where you do stop. So when you say that, my brain goes to, well, wait a minute, you can stop here, but you can't stop there. It has to be, basically what you're saying is it has that structure.
Fluidity.
Yes, it has that structure where at this time when you are doing continuous reps, at this time you're holding for 5 seconds, either in the lengthened or shortened position. Basically, it has to remain black and white. But within those continuous reps, or when you are supposed to be doing continuous reps, you can't stop. It's a continuous rep situation at that time.
Yeah, always remember I posted a muscle round doing a single leg press where I just, you just alternate legs instead of resting. And like it was the 5th round, I pushed up and I took a breath for like half a breath. And then I went and Dr. Scott's like, oh, nope, you paused. That they've got to be continuous. And I was like, oh shit,
yeah,
he was true. Yeah, he was true. So I have trained myself to do continuous reps no matter what, even if I'm not doing cluster sets, which is way harder. I think it's an easy way to improve training is quit taking pauses. Because what if, one day you take 2 breaths? What if the next training session you take 4 breaths? That's going to change your total rep count if you're training to failure. Again, that's majoring in the minors for 99% of people. I like the thinking man stuff, so that's why I'm drawn to it, while other people are like, dude, shut the hell up. This is terrible. So real quickly, research has compared rest pause to traditional sets. Now, not Dante's style. So they're just doing typically, go to failure and then rest anywhere from, I think it was 10 to 20 seconds, go to failure. So in this one of the particular studies, it was they hit failure with 80% of the 1 rep max, and they had 20-second rest intervals, and they took as many rounds as it took to do 18 reps after the failure point. And that's still a rest. So I was like, that's brutal. I'm going to try that my next workout because that sounds so terrible. So guess what? And there's major limitations with research like we've talked about. This was only a 6 to 8 week study, so don't get too excited. There's other studies that had 10 to 12 weeks, but rest pause and traditional straight sets produce comparable muscle hypertrophy when total training volume is controlled, with rest pause offering potential time efficiency and in some cases maybe slightly better hypertrophy in specific muscle groups, i.e. the thigh, with strength gains being similar or slightly better with rest pause depending on the study and the outcome measured. Basically, it is saying what we did in the Dorian Rates deep research dive, where I looked at research for well over 24 hours, so long as volume is equated for, similar outcomes. So I like rest pause because it's very time efficient. I have a very limited time in the gym during the week, right? Tuesdays and Thursdays. I typically get to the gym around 12, 12:05, 12:10. I have to be out the door at 1:30, and I don't shortchange my warm up. So rest pause is cluster sets are very time efficient for me.
Okay.
Yep. But there's that. So I like clusters. We think we know what my answer is. I think I know what Skip's answer is, but let's move on. So that was really long. The rest of them are going to be a lot quicker, but those are the various cluster sets. We have traditional drop sets, right? And I will let you, traditional drop sets. So let's have you lead that conversation and I'll chime in when we're done. Because there's some research I could throw up.
I'm a drop set guy. If I'm going to extend a set, that's typically how I'm going to do it. I don't want to jump ahead, but I do want to state that I'm not a forced rep guy.
Okay.
I know we're going to get to that, and I'll give the reasons why when we get there. But definitely not a forced reps guy. So the drop sets tend to be where I go, and I don't use them very often. And I think people might be surprised by that. I just find failure. My adjustment to intensity is typically based on volume and whether I'm going to potentially do a drop set on occasion. It's just my way. It's just the way that is, I guess, the most simple for me, and it's been the most productive. One of the reasons is because I don't respond terribly well to high intensity techniques. I very quickly will become overtrained. Here's another thing that I do as well. When I start them, or if I use them, and it'll become more frequent. So if I use them once, then I start to go down that path, and then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 weeks in, I'm using them and I have to force myself to pull back. Why? Because the pumps are better, because I can reduce the volume, because that feel is so good. Again, coming back to fluidity and the feel of the reps and the movement during a drop set, that fluidity, that rhythm, that feel, I've referred to it as the green room. Those reps that just feel so perfect and you're right there catching that perfect wave. It's very easy to do to extend a set. It's very safe to do. You're not really increasing any type of vulnerability or potential for risk by dropping the weight, which I'll get to with forced reps and why I don't like them shortly. It's just safer. It's more efficient, and it just works really well. So a drop set for me, say something, and some people won't do this. They don't like to do it as much with compound movements, but I prefer it that way. And if I'm going to use an intensity technique, it's typically early in the workout. It's not going to be with an opener, but it's probably going to be with my first, I call them growth sets or grow sets, where it's my first compound movement after the opener. So it could be, as an example, a dumbbell press. And the reason I'm going to use them early is because I have so much contractile force at that time. So some people will use them later, and there's nothing wrong. It's not really right or wrong. It's just what you prefer. But the reason I prefer them earlier is the contractile force issue. I still have the contractile force. I'm going to feel those reps versus later in the movement or later in that muscle group, maybe 3 exercises in, I'm going to be getting the reps and they're going to feel good, but there's not going to be as much contractile force. I'm not going to, I don't know if people listening have noticed this or they haven't. The more seasoned you are and the longer you've trained, you will probably notice these things more. Later in the workout for that muscle group, you'll still feel the muscle contracting, but a lot of times it's not that burn. It's not that feeling of, man, my pecs just feel like they're just going to like rip off my sternum. But that feeling is there for the first 2 or 3 working sets during that muscle group. That's that contractile force. Those are the sets that arguably are the most productive. And you lose that production value, that productivity, the deeper you go into that muscle group, in my opinion. So I want to use them early. So if I arbitrarily hit, 130s on a dumbbell press and I get, 9, 10, 11 reps, but they just felt really good. And I feel like I failed, not because the muscle necessarily due to the level of fatigue, but the weight just stopped moving. Like I feel like there's more in the tank. Then I'll drop them. I'm not going to count. I'm not going to count breaths. I'm not going to look at my watch. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to use roughly, if I had to guess, 20, 30 seconds. Remember, you're dropping heavy dumbbells, and then you're still picking up relatively heavy dumbbells and getting them into position, and then lying back and getting the dumbbells into position and starting a set. It's a laborious task that you're extending your energy requirements there. It's not like you're on a machine. You could definitely save a bit of effort and workload by using an exercise that's more simple to get in and out of, which is not a bad idea. But my point is that I'll still do them for dumbbell presses too. I might drop from 130s to, it's going to be a significant drop. It's going to be at least the hundreds, probably around the 90s, maybe even an 85. Because at that point, I don't care as much about the weight. I still want it to feel heavy. but I also don't want the form to have to suffer. And I don't want to go back in for 2 or 3 reps. I want to go back in for 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. I want more reps once I drop that weight. And I want the fluidity. I want it all to be good. I want to extend that set as much as I can. So that's my mental process with it. I like the drop sets even more for things like side laterals, because I feel that can allow me sometimes to go a little bit heavier on the first part of the set, where I'm not necessarily giving up mechanics, but if I were not doing a drop set, then I may have gone a little bit lighter. And this is where, when I said earlier, sometimes these things are not determined ahead of time. It's on the fly. So I might think to myself, okay, what am I going to do for this next set? If I go up, or if I stay at the same weight for side laterals, I might not hit more than about 8 reps. That is sometimes where I'm going to go, okay, I want to stay at this weight, or I want to try this next weight. But if I don't have that feel that I'm looking for, or I'm at that rep range of about 8, which is a little low for me for a side lateral, I'm definitely going to drop down 5 or 10 pounds and continue the set with the drop set. So that's my thought process as far as making those changes on the fly, versus I'm not an at-home guy going, okay, this is today I'm going to do side laterals, and I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it at all, because there was a time when I did do that. I don't even think about it when I'm going to the gym. I have done this long enough that I can literally think I could take 2 or 3 minutes and go, this is going to feel good today. This is what I'm doing. This is going to feel good today. And 99.9% of the time, I'm right. When I'm not right is when I'm warming up for that exercise and I go, yeah, my rotator a little bit. I'm a little bit stiff today. I'm a little depleted. It doesn't feel right. As an example, regular side laterals, both at the same time, sometimes they're just not going to feel right. So I may change that to lying into an incline. Or right now, I'm a lot of cable movements for side laterals, different angles and things like that, where normally I have more variety with dumbbells. And so it's a feel, it's an instinct. And that's something that obviously is developed over time based on experience. So these decisions are made on the fly for me 99% of the time. They are not pre-planned.
I'm so happy right now because I disagree so hard. It's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah. So I do have a question. So are you going to failure with each successive drop? Or are you doing a set number of reps, or does that
I'm going to failure.
vary? Okay, so you're hitting failure. Do you do 2 drops, so 3 total weights, 3 drops, 4 total weights?
Depends.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
it really does depend. Now, I typically won't drop more than on one set. Like, it might be the last set of side laterals or the first set. It's not going to be, oh, I'm doing 3 sets of side laterals. I'm going to do a drop set for each one of those 3 sets. No.
Yep.
I mean, on occasion that may happen, but again, that would be something that a decision I would make right then on the fly, but it's not typically something that's going to happen. I do not overuse intensifiers. I can't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
So I think you said something that people are going to gloss over. At one point, you were very logbook driven early in your career, which I think is important to do. Then as you get more experience, then you could start doing what Skip's talking about he's been training longer than I've been alive, and I'm 39 years old. Right. So like you have the experience and the like, you are an expert, 10,000 hours being expert, like you've put into work to be able to do that. My whole concern with, like we've talked about multiple times, with the whole science base, trying to do less work, reps and reserve, how the hell are you going to do that if you've never gone to failure or gone over the line? Like, you need to know that. So that's the concern. We're trying to be less work, when usually bodybuilding's always been about, well, if 1 is good, I'm going to do 17.
Right.
So with that said, with drop sets. So I typically am not a big fan of traditional drop sets. I do mechanical drop sets we'll talk about next, which is totally different, and I'm sure is nails on a chalkboard to you. But if I do drop sets, it'll be the final movement for that body part. So I won't put them in the middle. So if you got 3 chest movements, the final set for chest is a drop set, but that's very, very rare. I like doing drop sets when I was younger. Now I typically don't. What's interesting, and maybe it's just because, your body adapts to the stimulus you give it. Like when people try out to be my training partner, I'm leading the workout, sorry. But like my nervous system and my brain fatigue and all that is used to cluster sets of, hitting failure multiple times in a very short period of time. I'm good. But if I do a drop set randomly, even if I'm moving on to the next body part, for some reason, drop sets seem to smoke me, right? Like when you're lowering the weight. Why? I have no idea. I mean, you would argue, okay, maybe if I want to be smart and sciencey, there's a little bit more peripheral fatigue, but there's going to be peripheral fatigue with cluster sets / peripheral fatigue washes off quickly. Like, so it's just one of those things where that's what I've noticed about myself, right? So I don't like doing stuff that's going to wipe me out or prevent me from continuing to train as hard as I want in the gym. So I typically stay away from them, and I will only do them as the final set for that body part. So I'm very excited that you and I are very opposed on this topic.
Well, and for the same reasons. I mean, I hear you explaining what you're doing, and I'm thinking to myself, that level of intensity with that level of volume it would be overkill for me. So and these are the individual,
which is awesome,
variables that happen between, and it's not even just age related. Like I've trained for 41 years, that plays a part. But even when I was younger, it was a similar situation because my recovery, my recovery is arguably better at 55 than it is for most people at 55 after training for 41 years. But in my 30s, you would think, oh, okay, your recovery was probably really good at that time. Not for that particular age. I guarantee, because I've trained so many people at so many different levels for so many years, that I have always said I am on the low end of when it comes to recovery, when it comes to volume and intensity. I step over that line very, very quickly.
Anecdotally, I'm built to be an endurance athlete, so that might be why
that may play a part.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like I've not done the genetic testing, but I guarantee. I mean, I just know, right?
I can give you an example, just real quick to make my point. If I go in and I go to failure on a set of dumbbell presses at a certain weight, if I stay at that weight, even if I rest for a minute and a half, I get my breathing back and everything else, I'm going to go in, and there's no way if I got 12 reps at that weight to failure, I'm going to literally drop into the 7 or 8 range.
Okay.
It's there. Yeah, so I don't want to say it's a cliff, but it is a sharp drop. So typically it's uncommon for me to be able to stay at the same weight. I typically have to drop even when I'm doing straight sets, where other people may be able to take that minute and a half or 2 minutes, come back and get close to 12 reps again. That's not going to happen for me. And then if you put dieting in there, not, 4 weeks out from a show, but a deficit, shit, that cliff becomes even sharper.
Yep. Are you somebody where one rep's great and the next rep, oh shit, there's failure, there's no like grinder reps? Or do you
that is in a dieting mode? And there's a rabbit hole there, but I will tell you this. I have found over the years that sometimes you think, and I have thought, oh, I'll reduce the reps because I only got 8. And I let me be careful here. Reduce the weight so that I can get more reps. And if I got 8 on the first one, I could reduce and do 3 more sets, reducing the weight for each one. And I'm still going to fail at 8 reps. Sometimes it's like, okay, if I stay at that same weight, I can still get the 8 reps. It's a bizarre thing. It's almost like my body has said, you're going to fail at 8 reps no matter what. And that is for me, that's part of the deficit and part of it's typically a dieting issue, not an off-season issue.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a common theme for most people. But I will, not saying you, because we know you know what you're doing, but we talked about, I think the last episode or when we did the female question, like just because you're dieting doesn't mean you're going to have a bunch of strength loss. Like, you fight to maintain as much strength as
Right.
possible, because how you go into, I'm dieting, I'm going to lose it. Especially when people are like you've been in a deficit for 2 weeks. Slow your roll. It's not
Right.
changing anything.
Yeah, and there's a mental component there, big time.
Exactly.
Too.
So be
Yeah.
careful of how you're talking to yourself. Okay, so research on drop sets. So drop sets and straight sets produce comparable hypertrophy when training total volume is controlled. Sounds familiar. With drop sets offering a more time-efficient approach, straight sets may provide slightly greater strength improvements, while other studies found no difference. So some studies suggest, and then I typed all this up, so I'm just reading it verbatim so it makes sense. Some studies suggest a possible modest advantage for drop sets in acute muscle swelling and metabolic stress, but these do not consistently translate to superior long-term hypertrophy, i.e. one found a little bit more growth in triceps, but it was not statistically significant, so we don't count it that. So again,
and I'm not going to give it a lot of, honestly, I'm not going to give that a lot of credibility when it's one muscle group and not another one.
Correct. Yep.
That's
and
just
again,
me.
I think these were 10 to 12 week studies again. And remember, we showed what the average study participant looks like in the trap episode that's coming out tomorrow. So yeah, just food for thought. So once again, so long as volume's equated for, great. So what do you like and what is your time frame? If you're short on time,
is it a different stimulus than what you have done before?
Exactly. Yep. So those are that. Now, reverse run the rack is like, obviously switching it, 5 reps with 5 pounds, 10 reps with 10 pounds, and you go up. I used to do a lot of that when I was younger. I don't do that anymore.
I don't do that either.
Yeah. Mechanical drop sets. This is where I get off of, is mechanical drop sets. So I have a bunch of them. We're not going to show them all on screen. I'm fine with us putting them in the show notes if people want to click on different examples if they don't know what a mechanical drop set is.
Real quick.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't want to lose this because we just touched on this. The one time that I will use an increase going up the rack is once I'm into a workout, and it's funny because it just popped into my head.
Mm-hmm.
I do this a lot for side laterals. I may open with a cable, but if I go to dumbbell side laterals, I sometimes will start with the 20s and go 4 or 5 reps. Then I go up, but I'm warming up. And then I go to the 25s and I do 4 or 5 reps. And I kind of and we're talking like maybe 10, 15 seconds between. It gives me a good idea of where the fluidity is going to be as I warm up to see how my shoulders feel, whether they're pumping up real good, whether they're contracting evenly left to right, that sort of thing. And that gives me a good idea of where my top set is going to be. But I won't use that ascending, that ramp during actual work sets or during any type of an intensity, intensity technique. Yeah. I just wanted to put that in there. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, one of my favorite ways, I think it's my wrist is so messed up. I can't do a bunch of dumbbell curls anymore, but I would do, palms up, 5 reps with the 5s, 10s, 15, 20, doing 20 reps with the 20s. Then when you hit failure, you say I hit failure with the 35s at 4 reps. I then immediately have to go to the 30s and do 4 reps, but now I'm going to do a hammer curl because I'm a little bit strong, and then do 4 reps all the way back down. It was brutal. Like, I'm pretty sure I almost gave myself rhabdo the first time because I did it on my birthday, just making it up as I went. And that's when I was 150 pounds. So, like, what muscle was there
Dr.
to
Marv
build
did
rhabdo?
something that was not planned, and it was not black and white.
Correct.
Like, what the hell are you doing?
You're
crazy.
Right?
You're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. Okay. So mechanical drop set. So you're doing the same movement, the same load, but you're changing the execution to give yourself the mechanical advantage, hence the term mechanical drop set. These are have to be very well planned out. And that's why I'm drawn to that. I like the training minutia of how do I take a movement and tweak how I'm doing it to then be able to extend the set. I love it. I know, I'm sure for you it's nails on a chalkboard.
It is.
Yep. But that is my jam. So I really like it because I will have to think and plan ahead. Every once in a while I'll create them on the fly, but usually I am thinking and planning ahead of time because training is my all-time favorite topic, even more than performance chiropractic, nutrition, rehab, whatever, training is, I still will write training programs for fun just to make sure I don't lose that skill. right? So I love mechanical drop sets, but you have to understand what you're doing with training in order to do them. So I have at least 5 of them that we could include in the show notes. People can click on. We're not going to kind of break each down, but those
Okay.
are mechanical drop sets. I love them. But I would treat them like a traditional drop set, meaning that's my final movement for that body part, right?
Okay.
I'm not going to do it early on because you're going to be smoked. Because some of these mechanical drop sets might be 3 or 4 movements long, and you're going from there. Okay. You obviously have your supersets, your trisets, right? Those are great when you're short on time. You could do the same body part. So 2 movements for biceps in a row. You could do opposing biceps and then triceps, or you could do totally different biceps and then quads. I think they're great if you're short on time. There is a little bit of a conditioning component that might be nice to have. I don't think they are the best for just straight strength gains, because that second movement, you're always a little fatigued going into it. Again, people overly, that's the trendy word, right? It was stretch mediated hypertrophy. Now it's fatigue this, fatigue that. That's the buzzword.
Right.
But I like my beginners doing supersets. When I do my athlete program, so I did the program for the Alvin Community College baseball team this season. I did trisets for athletes. So athletes train differently than bodybuilders. So it would be an upper body movement, a core movement, a lower body movement, and they go from one to the other to the other. And
Oh, different muscle groups.
Yep. Totally different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But again, athletes.
Absolutely. Sport specific. Correct. Yeah, totally get it.
But that's how I train athletes. But for hardcore bodybuilding, I'm not a huge fan of supersets or trisets, but to each their own. What are your thoughts?
Very similar. Every now and then I may superset in isolation with a compound. We're talking about triceps. I use the example of, say, maybe an overhead, long head cable movement with a hammer strength dip as an example.
Love it.
If I do this, I will do it as a finisher. And I will not do them heavy. I will do them light for more of a stretch, squeeze, finishing with a pump. This would be something where I'm in prep. I'm not feeling as strong, and I'm trying to, I don't want to say maximize glycogen depletion, but I'm focused more on the pump and just training the muscle versus trying to get it to grow in an off season. I wouldn't use it to try to grow from a hypertrophy standpoint. Trisets, I think, are just, quite frankly, over the top. And when you get into giant sets, honestly, it's to me, it's just silly. It's just, to me, so overkill. The other thing I want to say is I am vehemently opposed and will not do supersets with opposing muscle groups. It's not my jam. I'm not going to do buys and try. I'll tell you when they're good. They're good if you want your arms to look really big for a picture on Instagram, and that's about it. About the only time where I could think, okay, there's justification. Maybe a triset or a superset with, say, side laterals and an overhead front press, where you're focusing more on side delt, and then you're shifting it to a little bit of front delt, but still being able to use the fatigue of the side delt, say with a side lateral, to kind of further the impact or the stimulus on the side delt with an overhead press. But it's just not very common. Not a big fan of training to that level of I just don't think it's terribly productive. And it's exhausting more so than it is productive from a hypertrophy standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah, I think most programs that are supersets are beginners because they don't have a ton of time. Right.
And the time equation, or the time situation, is important, because then, of course, doing opposing back and chest, or hamstrings and quads, or something like that, that's completely different.
Awesome. It's
but in an ideal situation where you're just having your regular workout, time is not an issue, and you want to be as efficient as possible, to me, it's nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, not doing it.
Okay. So giant sets. Milos.
Yeah.
It's 4 more exercises for the same muscle group back to back with minimal rest. So, and this is Chat GPT info, everybody, but it sounded right.
And I would say minimum of 4 because sometimes it's 6.
Oh, yeah, he'll do more. Yeah, correct. So 4 to 6 exercise succession, typically with isolation first, compound later, or more specifically, stretch position to mid-range to peak contraction, which technically is the exact opposite of how you fatigue. So you lose the ability to fully shorten a muscle first, right? So typically you actually want to reverse that, but to each their own. Then you rest after the full set. And then here's the kicker. You do it for 3 to 5 total rounds. Hell no, absolutely no.
Yeah.
So an example for chest, cable crossovers to an incline Smith press, to a flat dumbbell press, to push-ups to failure.
Yeah. And then hold your shoulders for the next 5 minutes because you did incline, then you did flat. Now, I will say this from a sarcoplasm type of, and that's, I think, why it fits with Milos is because he's
of the other
big on
stuff
insulin.
that he does. Yes.
Huge on insulin, volumization, pump. I totally get why he does it.
Yep.
But that to me is not core, I don't want to say core training, but hypertrophy at its core. This is a different type of training that is specialized or focused on sarcoplasmic volumization based on absurd amounts of glycogen or glucose, carbs, for glycogen depletion to supercompensate based on insulin use and a high amount of insulin use. And that's coming from someone who is big on insulin. So there's that.
And lots of intra. His intras are 30 items long.
Yep.
So to each their own. It was funny. Chat GPT, goals and benefits, massive time under tension, maximizes blood flow and pump. And it literally said, to Chat GPT's credit, sarcoplasmic hypertrophy focus. Breaks plateaus through novel stimulus and boosts metabolic stress and muscle fatigue without needing max weights. Yeah. Like you might, like some of the, like he's working with Regan, like I think one giant set, he only had a plate each side on a barbell press.
Yeah.
Like now that works because it's Regan, but the average person using that light a load is not going to be able to grow. Right. That's to each their own. So those are giant sets.
I think it's akin to saying that the rest of us mere mortals could do side laterals literally with no weight for an hour. And that's you're going to get some kind of benefit out of it. It's just at some point it becomes kind of silly.
Yeah. So to each their own. But again, that's like a lot of thinking. Like he was known as the thinking man's bodybuilder. So like that's literally one of his nicknames, if I correctly recall.
I like the outside of the box thinking. It's just I'm not always going to agree with you. Once you get outside of that box, you better make sure what you're doing is justifiable.
Since the listener mentioned blood flow restriction, yes, how I do blood flow restriction, where you do it, then you immediately train the body part, is an intensifier. Normally, blood flow restriction is a way to make things a little bit easier. So like I've shown the leg extensions, the pendulum thing, and it was a mile rep set. It was BFR leg extensions, 1 mile rep set, pendulum, immediately loaded stretch, done. But you could do BFR and then do your normal arm training. Like,
and let's not forget 4 reps before we get out. Okay.
Yes. Next. So as always, Skip is always one step ahead.
Just like, I don't want to forget that one.
Literally what is next on my list is forced reps.
Okay.
And I have, are you doing forced negatives or forced the entire range of motion? Right? Because you could have it where your partner only helps you lift it up and you've got to fight the negative. Or are you so smoked they're helping you move through the entire range of motion? I personally
not a fan. Go ahead.
Hate forced reps.
Okay, we're on the same page on this one. Not a fan. So why do you not like them first?
I'm so OCD. I don't know if my training partner's loading off 20% or 50%, but the bigger thing is injury prevention.
Yep. That's where I go to first. I don't care how much resistance they're giving me as long as the bar, though. I have one prerequisite if I am forced to do forced reps. You got to keep the bar moving. It's got to be fluid, but it's not, I don't want it moving too much because I don't want you doing the bulk of the work. I don't want to do 3 work sets where I don't feel the muscle working I want to feel it, but I also don't want it to stop. So if it starts, I'm basically giving an example with my hands of saying like a bench press or a dumbbell press. I don't want the weight to stop. I don't want to, and then we go from there. The other thing, and this might be the number one reason, is I need my reps to be even from left to right. So if you're going to give me a forced rep, you better do it even. And that was a big thing when my wife first started working out with me. And thankfully she came around very quickly, because even if I'm doing heavy dumbbell presses, you better not touch those dumbbells. It's from the elbows. And you better not pull on one more than the other. Now, if I'm bench pressing, pull from the bar. I'm fine with that. But you better pull at the same path that I'm pushing. Because if you're pulling high or you're pulling low or you're pulling left or right, we're going to have an issue real quick.
Yeah.
So when you get into forced reps, it's also technique. It's also trusting and knowing that person can give you the actual spot. There's too many details and too many things that can go wrong. And again, that comes back to injury. I see people spotting people with squats for force. It's just such a horrible idea. Now, you want a spotter if you get in trouble, but don't rely on that spotter if you get caught. It should be a done and dump type of situation.
And especially if you don't know the person.
Sure.
Don't ask
question.
a stranger ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
100%. 100%. Yeah. Plus, I have found forced rep, boy, the easiest way for me to go start digging a hole for recovery is forced reps. And I don't know, you got to be around a long time to really know this, but forced reps were a big deal. If you weren't doing forced reps in the 80s,
you weren't a bodybuilder.
Were you even are you even a bro? Do you even lift? I mean, you just had to. And it was bad because I was starting out. So I'd get, these fat strength guys in the gym. And if you ask them to spot you, boy, you're doing 3 or 4 forced reps and they're not letting you out. Oh, come on, bro. You're going to come on. It's just, God, fuck this. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Their groin is in your face as you're straining on a bench. Yeah.
It's just the whole thing is ugly.
So, next, probably going to be nails on a chalkboard, overcoming eccentric or negatives. I love them. And to complicate it further, I created this using a muscle round. So it was even more complicated. But essentially what you're doing is you are anywhere from 20 to 50% stronger on a negative. So we're going to talk about this next of isometric. So you are strongest in the negative. You are second strongest with an isometric. You are weakest in the positive, aka the concentric. So essentially these are machines usually where you could, say you're on a chest press machine, you press with both hands and then only one hand you do the negative. And then you press with both hands and only one hand do the negative again because you're stronger on the negative, so you could overload that side. There are companies that are like 30 grand where they could do this with even like a back squat to where my one buddy who I mentioned, Throne Ruiz, who just did a show, they were looking at it and he sent me a video where the positive was only 135 on a squat, but the negative was over 500 pounds. And he just had to fight. And I was like, that's a cool piece of equipment. However, it's brutally expensive. How often does it break? And you would have to literally have members like take a class of how to use it or limit it because it's so technologically advanced. I don't think that's great for a general population gym, blah, blah, blah. So I like them. But they're very nuanced. They're not going to be the bulk of your training thing. But say you've got a lagging body part and you've already fixed the issues we've talked about. You're not overdoing it. You're actually getting contraction. Doing 3 to 4 weeks of force negatives on a body part that's lagging might be a novel stimulus to get some growth.
Yeah, I think it's novel. I'm not going anywhere against or going anywhere near it. I'm not going to do any type of what do I say? If I can't get the rep, if I can't positive and negative, I'm not doing it.
Okay.
No, to me, it's just, again, it's, and I'm not saying that there isn't science that can back it up, All I'm saying is I think that is overcomplicating. And I also think that because there's so much more resistance in the negative, it's just a vulnerability that I'm not willing to put. I don't think the advantage or the gain is going to be enough to justify the risk. And I'm just, it's just kind of a rule. I don't want to say a rule, but it's just something that's always been in my head that if I'm not going to be able to move the positive, then I'm just not going to, no.
Yeah, teach them. But yeah, it's just, I don't think they're not as popular as they once were. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of doing isometric holds once you hit failure, because like I talked about, you're still stronger. So say you're doing your chest press and you can't get all the way up. Well, you keep fighting and contracting and pushing and squeezing for 5 to 10 seconds, and then you're done. So very tiny, minutia detailed. Mm-hmm. Does it have to happen? No. But it is a way to get a little bit more out of the muscle, right? That's why Dante did isometrics after you did your 3 sets to failure with with the rest pause set. I like them. But again, I don't do it every single time, because if you do it every single time you hit failure, you're going to overdo it. So it would be, 1 or 2 times in a workout for that body part.
And I'm not an isometric hold, but I do things like, as soon as I break the stick, this is just an example that popped into my head. As soon as I break the sticking point on a pendulum or a hack squat, and I know it's pretty much my last rep, as soon as I break that sticking point, I will slow down the movement and take it very, very slowly, as slow as I can take it to the top, knowing that's the last rep. So I'm going to drag this rep out as much as I can, because I just barely broke that sticking point. Yeah. So I'll do that versus, say, an isometric type hold. I'll use partials on occasion with side laterals. Because I think partials are underrated. That's an extension of a set. I think we talked about this during back as far as rowing when we were covering mid-back, and that is to continue a row movement with a mid-back shrug, where you're just essentially in the stretch position. Your elbows aren't moving much, but there's still movement, and there's still the ability to close the gap or retract the scapula a little bit. I think if you don't do that, you're leaving a little bit of work on the table in arguably one of the most important areas of your back for, hypertrophy and for size. So I think that is a good idea. But again, it's not something I'll do on every set, but it might be something I do on the last set of a row, as an example.
Yeah. And we're finishing with lengthened partials. It's you've got a gift, Skip. You've got
it's like so, and it's funny because people would think, oh yeah, they've been through this a million times before they record. No. Nope. We're on the same page. I just snorted.
This is the whole stretch mediated hypertrophy craze. On paper in a vacuum, great. I'm not a huge fan of them personally. It's very, very, very advanced, and everybody who's promoting them is sub 200 pounds.
Partials just in the shortened
phase? In the lengthened position.
Lengthened phase. Okay.
So now some people are literally going, oh, all I need to do is do like a lengthened partial. This is the motion for my triceps to finish it. And I'm like,
okay, so you're saying a set of partials.
Yes, they're now doing a set. Now, I like yours, like we talked about, with doing the Kelso shrug as a way to extend the set. Yes, that's like a mechanical drop set and lengthened partials in one.
Yeah.
Right? But no, people are promoting, I train a muscle and then I only do lengthened partials. And I'm like,
gotcha. Yeah, I would not be a fan of that. That's an extension or an intensifier for me, not a training methodology.
So that is all the intensifiers that I am aware of, other than, the whole West Side cattle prods, if you fail a weight to keep going and all that jazz. But we do not promote that on Between Two Dumbbells.
Right.
And I don't know if can you think of any other intensifiers we missed?
No, I can't. I mean, obviously there are other things that can be done as intensifiers, but that covers what I think the vast majority of people would see as intensifiers as far as labels. I think it would be easier if we for the smash or pass, because I think we can both agree we're going to smash on a lot of these. Let's only focus on what we would pass on.
Yep.
As far as intensifiers, how about that?
Yeah. Okay. So clusters, I'm smashing, but you might be passing. Are you passing on clusters?
Definitely, yeah. But you pass first, because then I'm gonna be like,
gotcha. Okay, so I'm passing on traditional drop sets. I am passing on giant sets. Supersets. Oh God, I can't say medium. I'll smash, but I have a hard time with that. But I'm for sure passing on giant sets. I am passing on forced reps, and I am passing on lengthened partials as its own set.
Mine will be easy. I'm only going to smash drop sets, partials at the end of a set. I'm definitely going to smash. But I think that pretty much covers it. I definitely will pass on, forced reps, and I'm going to pass on a lot of it. I'm only going to smash the drop sets and the partials at the end. The occasional superset, but that would be in a specific situation, not for hypertrophy. Like if I was just based on growing in the off season, I definitely would not do that. I am very, very pro. I think you are too. Would smash intensifiers, but not on a frequent basis. And I always tell my clients, use them infrequently so they have an impact. Because if you start using them frequently, then arguably that becomes your norm. Yep. And then if you get rid of them, then you're essentially losing a stimulus versus gaining one.
Yeah, I agree. And remember, like, I do a lot of cluster sets because that's how I get my volume in a very short period of time. So it works. If I had 2.5 hours, I would probably just do straight sets, but I don't. Yeah, that's not my life. So awesome. That was a very, very, very long answer to a great question. So
a lot of information there. Though.
Yes.
A lot of information.
Devin, I think you said his name was. So that was a great question.
Devin. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Yep.
Awesome.
Very good. All right, let's transition. We'll be quick. Let's transition to intimate time with Skip and Dr. Marv.
The sweet music of love, we can no longer...
All right, so if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. Make sure you hit subscribe and all that. These are 10 questions that cannot be related to what we do. Skip does not know what they are, and he has to answer them. I am going to go easy on Skip today because I have been very deep and thought-provoking. So I'm going to give him a little bit of an easier day today. We'll see how long that lasts. Don't get too comfortable, Skip. All right. So number 1, what is your favorite breakfast cereal?
Favorite breakfast cereal, even though I'm not big on breakfast cereal anymore. I used to use it a lot for skip loading. I would say I can eat very, very quickly a lot of Cocoa Krispies, or there is a chocolate-based Lucky Charms. It's like a generic brand that comes in a bag.
Interesting.
Kill that. Okay. But I haven't had kids cereals to skip load in a long time, years.
Number 2, do you eat protein bars? If so, what's your favorite brand?
Absolutely do not, and I don't recommend them because they're garbage quality, even the ones that are considered to be good. There was one that was arguably the best, but it still wasn't great, and that was called Best Bar Ever. But there's a story there that we don't have time for. I tried them at the Arnold Classic in 2019 because I was talking to John Meadows at the booth. I was talking to the owner, Best Bar Ever. They had to be refrigerated. They were really good because I didn't have a meal and everything else, but they have sugar alcohols. And that story, it was bad.
We can kind of get where he's getting towards.
I had 6 of them, and it was bad. Next question.
Good God. Okay. Have you slept with your new watch? I mean, your new timepiece yet? Have you slept with it all?
I have not. I have not slept with it, but I do wear it at least once a day, even if I don't go anywhere, because not because I need to, from a, like, I need to wear it. It's actually right here. I wear it because when I wear it, I don't have to wind it. And because it's so new,
Oh, yeah.
I don't like to
Mess with it.
I don't like to mess with it any more than I have to, even
Yeah,
though it's obvious, it's a Breitling. It's a great time. I've had a lot of fun shopping for it.
Yeah.
It's a multi-month project. It's been on my brain for a long time.
Mhm.
Super excited about my new timepiece.
That's awesome. Top 3 movies for you, and it could be your initial reaction. I'm not
Fair
going to hold
enough.
you to this for life.
These, and other people will be like, oh, what about this? It's off the top of my head, but Shawshank is about as good as it gets.
Mhm.
Timeless classic that it's one of those movies I could just watch 100 times, but not close. Like I'm not going to watch it and then watch it 1 month later. Unforgiven is arguably the best Clint Eastwood movie ever. You can take everything a man. I don't want to screw it up because I'm on the spot. I'll leave the quote alone. Point is it's just great. That ending scene is great. And I would say this, and this might kind of surprise people, but the one movie that I could watch over and over and over forever and ever is the original Grease.
Okay. Nice.
It's just so
Okay.
cute and cool,
Yeah.
and the musical,
Yeah.
and it's just good. It's just good shit.
Okay, so then this might be your answer to the next one. Is there a particular movie that when it comes on the TV, no matter what you're doing, you have to sit down and watch it?
Actually, Grease would rank up there, but it's actually the original Top Gun. There is
okay.
no other movie that is as nostalgic to me. That movie impacted me arguably for my future of moving and getting out of Michigan, wanting so badly to be in Southern California. It really played a big, it hit when I was like 14. It's just so iconic to me. And I've seen it. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say I've seen it 125, 150 times.
Nice. Last book you read?
I'm actually reading right now, which is odd. I had mentioned to my kids, they mentioned to me, Dad, you always used to have when we were young, you always used to have a book on the book stand in your master bathroom next to the toilet. And that was kind of early days of social media. I would read a lot, historical, political things, and on both sides. I'm not a one side political or social kind of guy. I want to hear both sides. But right now I'm reading 50 of the best baseball moments, and then parentheses there's actually 125 in the book. Huge baseball fan.
Number 7, do you ever have road rage, especially on prep?
Never.
Nice. Good.
And in part because my wife, it's so off-putting. And it's an issue. It's a bone of contention between myself and my wife to the point where if we go somewhere, she does not get to drive, even if I have to eat.
Oh, she does? She has road rage?
Yes, she does. And it's so off-putting. I've had to bitch her out when she's riding shotgun. I'm like, you don't get to flip people off and do all this shit. You don't get to do that, because if I'm going to get into a fight with somebody, it's going to be because I did something to get in that. I'm not getting my ass kicked for you. I don't care how long we've been together, because no one's going to want to fight you. They're going to want to fight me. So I get to choose who I'm going to fight with.
That's awesome. Number 8, favorite board game.
Honestly, this is so old. I mean, such an oldism, but I love to play Scrabble.
Awesome. There we go.
That's so bad.
I mean, with your word language, I would never play with you. Ever.
And it's funny
I
because
would never play with you.
You're so limited by your letters and scores anyway.
Yeah.
But I do like it. I actually do. I don't play a lot of board games anyway, but if I do, I'll play Scrabble.
Okay, what about your favorite card game?
Definitely. Well, if I go back to Michigan, I love to play Pepper. I will fucking smoke you.
What is it?
It's Pepper. There's Euchre, which is it's demographic. I don't like Euchre because it leaves a handful of cards in the deck, and you're stuck with in Euchre. You're kind of stuck with the Trump. What's Trump? In Pepper, you can choose.
Okay.
So, and all the cards are out. So I love to battle. Somebody will call ahead of me and I'm like, all right, I pretty much know what you got. I'm gonna smoke you. I'm gonna go opposite. Pepper gives you more. Spades to me is a prison game.
Yeah.
And I said before, and I know this sounds shitty, it's kind of lowbrow because you're using, like a 7 will take a 2. At least in Pepper and Euchre, we're going 9s and above. We're not gonna mess with 8s and below. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah. That's funny. Last question: Disney or Universal Studios?
And this is one of those where people will make anything political. I don't give a shit about anything political. I will go now. If I'm going to go to the park, I'll definitely go to Universal because I don't have kids anymore. But we had an epic Disney trip in 2010 with the kids. Spent an arm and a leg, surprised them Christmas morning with letters, Scrabble letters, and said, "We're going somewhere. Figure out where we're going." And it took them like forever. Their bags were already packed. We left Christmas morning, came back New Year's Day, and we stayed at the resort, spent an arm and a leg, but it was a great time. Let me just add too, I am a cribbage maven, and I left that part out. I play cribbage online almost every day. I would play cribbage tournaments. I am very good at cribbage, but nobody plays cribbage in a group.
Yeah. Nice. And you're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we've gone so long. We already answered one listener question. The 2 questions I think would go way overboard, so we could save them for next week. But that means Devin was put into the drawing for the Team Skip protein.
Very cool. Very cool. And I like that idea. A lot of information. Great topic today. So I think that's a good call. On that note, I'm going to take us out. We got to get to getting with Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. We want to hear your questions, feedback, and any ideas you have about future topics in the YouTube comment section. If your question or topic is chosen and used on the show, you'll go into a drawing and we will randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 5-pound bag of Team Skip protein from TrueNutrition.com. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how can someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
I'm most active on Instagram at dr.marvin.saysdc. My office is in the Houston Bay Area. I do telemedicine for all of Texas and nutrition coaching. If you're not in Texas, don't worry. Go to theeducatedmeathead.com where you can put together your warm-up routine for posing, bodybuilding, whatever, workout programs, seminars, online courses, all that jazz.
If you have too much skin, I'm your guy. Go to teamskip.com and you'll find all my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind, this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for the visuals and graphics, the awesome intros, and he also plays a huge role in the creative process. This project absolutely would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.